Okay. So we're live now. Welcome everybody. Welcome to this author live with our wonderful author Rishabh Dubey. I'm Ishvi Mishra, and we're just going to talk about Rishabh's newly released book Dev in this interview, and I hope you all enjoy it. So let me start by welcoming Rishabh. Hi Rishabh, would you like to introduce yourself to our audience, please?
Hi, Sri. Thank you. My name is Rishabh Dubey. I am an author from Lucknow, India, and I reside in Mumbai. And I have written 6 books so far, and my latest is called DAVE. It's an acronym for Department of Extra Dimensional Vectors, which is quite self-explanatory that it's a mix of mythology and science fiction. And it has been released by the wonderful Yuki Ito publication. And here is the book, which is the latest release. And as you can see, the great Yuki Ito logo is here, and Dave, as you can see, the blend of time and science fiction and mythology. So, if I can take a moment to tell about the book, it's a book which blends the story of the Ramayana, which is one of the greatest and most celebrated epics in India, and the Ramayana with science fiction. It's a very untoward blend, if I might say that. And it's a very new and newly discovered and experimented blend. I've tried to blend in a few characters of the Ramayana, one of the minor characters of the Ramayana, in a science fiction story which takes place across times and across dimensions from this era to then. So it's a very, it has a touch of nuance to it. And I'm sure that a reader who has interest in both mythology and science fiction would enjoy it.
Right. I personally think that the cover is beautiful. Not to brag or anything, but it's amazing. Like you said, it definitely brings that sort of element of science fiction and mythology and fuses it into one. So talking about that and talking about like the title itself, Dave, which like you said, it's an acronym for Department of Interdimensional Vectors, but it also means deity. It's in a way sort of like it's a parallel between the two. So can you talk about like what was the decision behind this title before we get into the book itself?
So I think the decision is quite not related to the book. So I saw that a lot of generations today are not quite that much in touch with our mythological history, or maybe I'm not saying from a religious or cultural aspect of it all, as a lot of people do, and maybe rightly or wrongly, I don't know. But I was observing that there is a little detachment from stories that began in India, and be it any stories belonging to any religion, culture, I don't care. There are many stories, diverse stories prevalent here. And right now, I saw that the generation which is coming, the Gen Z or the Gen Alpha, I belong to Gen Z, and the Gen Alpha, we are more accustomed to watching, showy science fiction visualizations and maybe stories like the Marvel Cinematic Universe and everything.
Right.
And we relate much more to that. And the idea was that if I can find a hero in Iron Man, who is a very fresh concept out there, then why not find heroes in stories of old? But to do that, you actually have to reimagine those stories and see from a perspective which is more suitable for us to understand and digest. So if I retell this story and with keeping all the historicities of the story intact, keeping all the sanctity of the story intact, if I retell this story to a newer generation, maybe they'll go back and actually read the original story, and the story would go on from there. Maybe a few versions of the story, but the story would stay intact. So that was the idea. And Dave, of course, became a parallel, a namesake parallel. Of course, I came up with the title Dave first, and I was sure about Department of Vectors, and it was initially extraterrestrial vectors, but the word extraterrestrial was quite used, and I'll say it would have been quite redundant to name a book as an extraterrestrial, using the word extraterrestrial in the name of the book. So I went with extra dimensional, which means beyond our particular dimension, like other dimensions. So that was a particular name, and it's, incidentally, it's the name of the department in which the protagonist of the book works for. It's a sub-department of Indian Space Research Organization. So I've been, as much as you can say, a nationalist, a globalist, a futurist, as well as a mythologist as possible in this a small novella of 164 pages. So that's it about Dave.
That's quite interesting, actually. I think it speaks a lot to how you derive inspiration, which is something I would like to talk about in a while. But before that, while we're talking about your inspiration for this book, can you also walk us through with the process of writing it? Like, when did you start writing it? How did the inspiration first strike you? And, like, what was the process, basically?
So I was reading the Ramayana, and there were a lot many characters. I had read the Ramcharitmanas rendition as well as the Sri Rajagopalachari rendition of Ramayana. So I have this habit of reading a lot of content, and then in between I take breaks and read the kind of content which I've never absorbed before. So I was reading science fiction, Ayn Rand, and Douglas Adams, and all this content. And in between, I had this weird urge to actually absorb mythology. So I read all the 18 books of the Mahabharata and then the Ramayana. And I was quite inspired by this one particular character. I'll not name that particular character, otherwise it'll be kind of a spoiler for this book.
Yes.
So that one particular character quite motivated me, that character had a lot of significance in the entire run of the story of Ramayana. And then, if people might not believe it, that I saw it in a dream that particular character is actually arising from this our time and going back to that time. So this small plot point came to my head, and the initial idea was to write a small short story about it and maybe make a small short movie about it. And I got in touch with few of my cinematographer friends, and I told them this idea, and they said it's a good idea, but there's no market in the video content world out there.
Right.
So I realized that a lot of books were being published about mythological retellings, like the Shiva, the Meluha trilogy, and everything. So I thought that why not like take some space in that huge domain, in that marvelous domain, and retell this entire story from the perspective of this particular character, whom I like so much and whom I want to amplify through a science fiction retelling. So that's the idea which came up. And the process of writing, my process of writing is very simple. I keep 10 cups of coffee and I start writing. And I generally begin in the middle, because I think the beginning and the end are two big parts, the two essential parts of the story to actually write from the start. Like, I don't start with the end or start with the beginning. Earlier, I used to start with the end. Now I think that as I build up the story from the middle, I reach the end and then I start from the beginning. So it actually completes the story in a circle in which I want it to be narrated to my readers. So it amplifies both the beginning as well as the end.
Right. That's quite interesting. This is something, I mean, every writer has their own process, and like, looks like you are so in tune with your plot that you're able to begin with the middle or the end as you please. So that's quite interesting. And that's also proof of your history with writing itself, because like you said, you've already released 6 books. I think you released your first book when you were 18. So talk to me about like your history with writing. Is it a passion that you've always had, or is it something that you just started doing at the age of 8?
I was, I think, 11 or 12 years old. Since my childhood only, I had this affinity of creating characters in midair and actually conversing with them. And my no offense to all anyone out there in the world, but my mom actually told me that you're schizophrenic. And so I was like, okay, I don't know what that term means. I saw that movie, A Beautiful Mind, quite later in life to understand what is schizophrenia. But I had this affinity of creating characters, and at a point of time, I was too frustrated. I was a lonely child. I was introverted as a child. I became extremely extroverted as a grown up. So there was a transition. But I was very introverted at a point of time in my life. And there on, I started writing and meddling with characters, and I started writing fan fiction first and ended up creating horrible content for people to look at. And then I realized that instead of this, I should create my own universes. So I started writing this book called Krykos, The Vertical Horizon. And I was 14 years old when I started writing that. And from 14 till 17, it was just writing that book and going through my examinations and all, and my 10ths, my 12ths, everything. And then after that, I got rejected for a long time. I think when I was 16 and a half to 17. Then I picked up another concept called The Mango Man, which was going to be my second book. And my first one was rejected completely, purely, on its face value. And also on the fact that I was merely 16 years old. So people didn't accept it when they saw my profile. So I went with the Mango Man, and actually I toned down my language a lot from Crycos. That was one of the suggestions I got from one of the editors of a publication house, and I toned down my language, made it more simplistic, realistic, added a few slangs here and there, and I created a story which was a political satire mixed with fantasy. So of course, as you can see the pattern there, fantasy is something I am more akin to, and I created the Mango Man, and I published it at the age of 18. So
Okay.
started at 11, kind of.
Okay. That's brilliant in my opinion. I mean, the fact that you were writing throughout your board exams or throughout the school years, I think that's that's something I think every child sort of dreams of. And I feel like everyone has these humble beginnings. So like you said, you started by writing fan fictions, but like you are here with 6 books published. So that's a great feat, Rishabh, and I'm sure you're proud of it, and I'm sure your readers are as well. But sort of talking more about your history itself, you've written in multiple genres. Definitely, fantasy is something that you dwell in a lot. But you've written, like you said, political satire. You've written like mythology. Right now, you've written science fiction. But when we look at this book, it's sort of a mixture of these genres, which is something I think that the world is definitely seeing a lot these days. So you'll see a lot of books with historical fiction and fantasy, or just history with fantasy, or like you've written mythology with fantasy. So did you sort of realize that this revolution was going on in the world, or like what was your decision behind releasing a book with sort of a mixed genres?
So, of course, everyone would realize, any big bibliophile would realize there is a revolution going on. But
Mhm.
when wanted to write this book, I was not looking at the genre. So, I don't generally understand that there's a genre I'm looking at. I decide a particular scene and then I realize, then I start to understand what is realistic or unrealistic in that particular scene. And there are a lot of things which many realistic written works also contain that are maybe not that possible in that world.
Right.
They are quite incredible, but still they have written it and it's being accepted as realistic. So as an author, I don't pre-assess the genre in which I'm going to write. I end up writing more of fantasy, and I think that's more of my internal innate affinity. But when I start to write a work, I just want to tell the story which is there in my head, and it bothers me a lot. I'm unable to sleep if a story is lingering in my head. Otherwise, I'll again be a pseudo schizophrenic. I'll again be talking to characters which I don't particularly mind. I enjoy it, but people around me start to think that he needs some kind of counseling. So that's something I try to avoid. Again, no offense to anyone. I'm just saying out of complete jest. And when I wrote Dave, as you mentioned, it's a mixture of a lot of genres. So my first book was a mixture of political satire and fantasy. My second book was purely science fiction, which was going to be my first book. Then I also wrote an anthology of poetry and science fiction. So that's one of the weird mixes which I had. Then I wrote a multi-author compilation. I started this initiative in which there are stories by different authors, including my own stories, and it has both satire, fiction, non-fiction, even biographical accounts. Then I wrote another anthology which is completely biographical. So I've written in all, I've panned across all kinds of genres which I know about, and I'm going to pan in more in the coming
Right.
time. So yes, this one is very special to me because it's a like blend of, as you mentioned, blend of numerous genres, not just mythology and fiction or fantasy.
Yes.
Numerous genres are there in this one. So this one is quite special to me, and it's short as well. So
Mhm.
I don't know how I've kept it so succinct.
Yeah, I did want to ask you, how was it easy for you to like write it in such a short way? And I know there are more books coming in this series, but still having like, I mean, you've highlighted so many important events in Ramayana. And even though what I really like about the book is that you've not really mentioned the names as of these characters as they appear in the Ramayana text itself,
Hmm.
but they're very recognizable. You're able to understand who's who, what's going on, and also you've highlighted like these huge events which took Hindi serials like seasons to like cover. So how did you do that?
I don't know. There was kind of a short summary in my head which I wanted to project. So I made out a plan for the book. As you can see, the all the chapters are named with Y, and there's a special reason for that. I'll not reveal that reason, and that reason you're going to discover in the third volume of this book. And all the chapters are named starting with the letter Y. And I jotted down 5 particular chapters, and I decided that I'm going to go with a novella because I didn't want it to be, as I mentioned, I wanted the new generation to read it. And the new generation has a very short attention span. And if I'm writing long, elongated science fiction tellings, then of course, not a lot of people are going to pick it up just on the basis of its width or its bulk. So I wanted to keep it short, and I realized that there's this whole domain of novellas which I can leverage. And I wanted to write a novella. I wanted to keep it shorter than 30,000 words. And that was the target all along. But while writing this book, I actually did not have to put in any amount of effort to achieve that target. When I started writing, I had the story completely, to the point in my head, completely figured out. And when I started writing, I had kind of a mind map. And as I mentioned, I started at the beginning. I started with the third chapter. I think that is Yagya. And I started with that chapter because that is one of the stories of Kamban Ramayana, which is one of the existing Ramayans out of thousands of Ramayans which exist in India. So Kamban Ramayana has that particular chapter, which other books don't have, other renditions of the Ramayana don't have. So I wanted to include renditions, different versions of the Ramayana in one book. And as you said, including just one Ramayana in one book is impossible. And so I started with that, and then I moved on to the next 2 chapters and then the first 2 chapters. So that's how I began, and I think I could do it effortlessly. Thankfully, I don't know, fortunately, maybe due to circumstances.
That's amazing. And also definitely looks like there's a lot of research that has gone into the book as well, which I definitely wanted to talk about more, because you describe these technical terms and all these physical things that, I mean, some things did go like bounce off my head, but I did understand them. Like, I feel like you've written them in such simple words that it's something that we did understand. And it's not just about the science fiction elements, which also includes time travel, right? Because time travel is a very tricky genre, because there can be so many plot holes in there, but I feel like you've sort of treated that very well. And also Ramayana itself, because you've also brought forward characters that people might not know, as in especially Gen Z might not know much about. So when it comes to research, like where do you start? Like, how does it begin? Is there a process when it comes to research?
Yeah, so when writing science fiction, I think the simple research is that being an engineer, I have access to IEEE and Google Scholar. So my basis of research is Google Scholar. What I do is science fiction, you cannot create science out of thin air. So that's the first law of science fiction. As I said, why have I called this book a fantasy as well? Because a lot of things are science created out of thin air. So like H.G. Wells's Time Machine is now not considered science fiction in the Science Fiction Research Society of the world. That's a big bummer for a lot of science fiction fans who think Time Machine is a marvel of a science fiction book. So the point being is that traveling to the past has been proven wrong, has been rebuked by a lot of researchers quite recently. So when you have research papers backing or refuting a particular hypothesis, that's where science fiction gets approved or negated to a certain extent. So there's a percentage of approval or rejection to that. So what I do, I try to think about certain concepts, and I see if they have certain grassroots in existing hypothesis or not. If they do have it, then they become an element of science fiction, because you extrapolate existing science to some paradigms which we have not achieved yet. Like if I say 100 zettabytes of memory, then of course we can have 100 zettabytes of memory, because now we have nano chips, nano memory, and it can be expanded, but we have to have memory chips, I think, which have to be million times smaller than the current microchips. So that is one constraint, but that is not a scientific constraint. That is an experimental constraint. So we can produce it eventually. So a scientific constraint is when it's completely negated, completely improbabilistic. There is not even a 0.001% chance. So that's how I come about science fiction, how I research science fiction, whether I can write this or whether it will be looked down upon or scorned at by regular science fiction readers. When it comes to mythology, as you mentioned, the research went about in creating these euphemistic renditions of the characters, where I wouldn't name the characters, but I would denote them through special special call signs for them, and which the readers would relate to, and definitely they would identify them with those call signs. But I did not want to actually offend, because these characters, I'll not say characters, these historical figures have been quite sacred for a lot of people,
Right.
and I think a lot of my family members find it quite sacred,
Mhm.
and people are quite attached to them. So I did not want to offend anyone. So my research went about majorly in not meddling with the facts, not writing something which did not actually happen at all,
Mhm.
and not writing anything which. So I did what I experimented with the plot holes, the parts which were not talked about, maybe the nights which were not discussed, the few hours which were missing from
Mhm.
that. So I used those plot holes to construct the story that this particular thing was happening at this point of that journey of Ramayana, of Lord Ram and his entire journey towards Ram Setu. So that particular journey, and I use those time spans to create the story. So my research went about more like normalizing the content to a more acceptable fashion.
Right. I think what you're describing definitely, is evident to how research and writing sort of goes hand in hand, and looks like you've made a great use of it. So that's amazing. And obviously, like you mentioned, you don't want to talk about the chapters themselves, but I would like to discuss the names of the chapters. So there are 5 chapters in the book: Yatra, Yug, Yagya, Yudha, and Yantra. So even though we will try to keep this spoiler free, but I feel like these chapters definitely speak to the journey that the protagonist takes from the first chapter to the end. So is this like, I mean, I just want to discuss why you decided on 5 chapters. I know it was a novella, definitely speaks to that, but 5 chapters and these 5 words especially.
I cannot tell you about the 5 chapters part because that's also a spoiler. So
Okay.
the number 5 is quite significant, as there's a mention of battle of a n number of kings
Yes.
towards the later part of the book, and in that battle, that 5 has a great significance, and that 5 even later after that battle has much. I think it'll have a greater significance when you find the third book, because third book, I'll give you a little spoiler. The first book is the past, the second book is a little in the middle of the present and the past, and the third book is the future. So
Mhm.
but the future from a mythological point of view, so that's something which has never been done, so I'm trying to do that. And that has the number 5 as a very important aspect of it, and the number 5 is a very important part of the journey of the protagonists, if I may
Right.
say. There's
Okay.
not going to be one. So there are going to be a few more in the books to come. So naming the chapters specifically with these words, as you see, they define, as you mentioned, they define the journey of the protagonist, which is Dr.
Right.
Matang Leeladhar Swami, and his journey throughout time, dimensions, through his struggles, and through his mental state in that particular situation where he encounters things which he had never witnessed before, and then uh, he is in a kind of a conundrum. So these chapters had to represent his conundrum throughout the journey. And as you can see, the first 3 chapters are more turbulently named than the last two.
Right.
So that's what I wanted to do with the chapter names. And there's going to be more such conundrum in the books to come. So
Right.
just keep waiting.
Okay, so the 3 things that we know about future installments in this series is that, first of all, there are going to be multiple protagonists, and the time period where it's going to take place, and obviously just everything that you talked about. So I mean, that's why very interesting. Definitely, the audience will want to get to know what happens next. But like just talking about like your interest, because it definitely seems like you've always had a passion for writing. You've had a passion for reading. It seems like, which has sort of like really has acted like a catalyst to you like having published 6 books. But something that I also want to talk about is that you're also a musician, which is
Hmm.
amazing. I mean, I can see the guitar at the back. So I mean, you definitely dwell into different art forms. So do they ever inspire each other? So just does your music inspire your writing, or your writing inspires your music?
So the first piece of content I ever wrote was called "The End of the Change." and the end of the change was a song which I wrote on my guitar, which I performed in my school as well. And it's actually the wordings of the song include the word Krikos, and Krikos was the name of my first book. And that end of the change has been included as a chant, as kind of a cantos and Krikos, that book.
Okay.
So music for me is kind of a bolster for my writing
I see.
fiction, and because I think any era which you are defining, it will not be free of music, and you have to understand uh, in movies and pictures and I think cinema or OTT, when it's quite easy to signify musical elements because you have background music, background score playing, and then you have songs in between. But in books, to signify a musical journey, it's quite difficult. So you cannot give background effects. You cannot even write some onomatopoeia, which is denoting some kind of a background effect. It'll be funny and not good funny. So in books, you have to be quite rhythmic with your language, quite rhythmic with the way you define your chapters, quite rhythmic with your content, and maybe at some points of time you can add some kind of a song in those. So not in this one, but definitely I have a song which is in the making right now, which I want to include in the second part. And there's going to be a song. It's kind of a chant again because I want that song to fit the context and not be completely out of the blue, out of nowhere. So it's kind of a chant, and that song will be an essential part of that book. It will be kind of a motto which will be signifying the essence of that book. So that's how I relate music. And otherwise also I also have the hobby of playing songs and playing covers and entertaining myself with music. So that part is also there, but majorly it's to bolster my passion for writing.
Okay, I think what I really like about this conversation is that as we go further in, you give us more and more spoilers about what's going to happen in the next installments. So, I mean, I'm sure your readers are definitely like squealing right now. So, that's amazing. Also, I just wanted to talk about the publishing process for you. You've already been published by multiple publishing houses. How was your publishing process like for this book, for Dev?
It was quite new, quite fast. In fact, quite paced up. I have worked with. I'll not downsize any other publisher, but it was a great experience. I think it was quite fast, quite new, and quite forward-looking, as I may say, because I'm getting one of the news which I got. I'm getting a blockchain certification for this book for a timestamp. So that was something which I've not seen in other publishers. And I encourage other publishers, rather than downsizing them, I can tell them to be, to buckle up and, catch up to this new persistence of technology which is happening. So the new array of features which Yuki has provided me with was actually appalling and surprising to an extent. And it was quite a fast process because I think this book was picked up not more than 3 months ago, two months ago, I guess. And the entire editing process, the entire design process, the entire content toning down, or the interior formatting and everything was happened without me. I was in isolation of it. Without me, it happened very fast. So I was quite flabbergasted with the entire publishing process. So thank you, Yuki.
I'm glad that you've had a smooth process with us. We are getting a few audience questions, which I will address at the end of the interview. So just sit tight. Sure. While we're talking about publishing, I also want to talk about this new venture I'm sorry, just give me a second. So this global initiative that you've taken, that is
the Voices of Silence.
Yes, your publishing platform. So tell me about that, because I mean, it looks like you've been in this business for a while now. I mean, 6 books in, 3 more books coming. So what was the idea behind this initiative, and why exactly did you try to do that?
So we had a literary event which I was a part of. It was a poetry night at a place in Lucknow. And there we found a few poets and authors who wrote in Hindi as well as in English, and some in Urdu, and some in local dialects, maybe local versions of Hindi like Awadhi. And they all were looking for publishers, and they were all looking for magazines. They were not looking for any kinds of payment. They were just they just wanted their content to be out there for the people. They did not want to invest a lot of money because they did not have it. And they did not want any kinds of returns because it was their passion. And they wanted to first push it and create a kind of an audience for themselves. And then maybe, go astray towards the path of commercial publishing. So there and then I had this idea. I think, maybe on too many coffee shots, and I had this idea. This enthusiastic, this vehemence rose from within me, and I was sitting with a friend of mine. His name is Wes, and he's also an author. So both of us, we thought that I think we should ask all these authors. We should distribute. We should go up to the mic and we should tell them our email IDs, and we should ask them to send forward their content if they are so willing. And of course, along with that content, they'll send some kind of a note that this is content by this is such author and cannot be used or reused, because people are quite possessive about their content. There's a lot of content theft which goes on,
Right.
and that is why blockchain certification. So
Yes.
yeah, so that theft is going on. So I told them, and the very next day we received around 60, 70 mails, and we woke up to it, a total of cumulative of 60, 70 mails both of us had received. We went through a lot of content. It took a lot of time because I was in college back then. I couldn't manage a lot of time. And after going through a few poems, I realized that this should be out there. But how to bring it out completely cost free? So I thought that maybe what I'll do, I'll self finance this content for them. I'll self finance a series for them, and I'll scrape up whatever money I have, because those were my college days. And me and Wes, my fellow partner in this, I'll not say crime, fellow partner in this, whatever it is, this initiative. And we both scraped up the little pennies we had, and we decided that we'll bring out one prototype copy of this book in the next 6 months. And we started reading the content, going through it, normalizing it, serializing it. We added both of our stories and contents as well. And then we came out with the book. Instead of a prototype, we actually released the book. We sent them their copies. They called us, they mailed us. They were quite happy with it, with the results of it. And we also promised them that if there are any surplus royalties and the ones that we have invested and the amounts that we have invested, then we'll definitely distribute them, because we always wanted to promote the process of writing and the process of publishing books and the actual passion of writing. So that was it. But after that, we realized that a lot of more mails were coming in. A lot of people had bought that book. And towards the end, we had mentioned that you can mail. And at that time, it was not a sure shot initiative that we were going forward with. And after getting so many mails, we were quite motivated to start having events of the Voices of Silence.
Okay.
And the Voices of Silence denotes, of course, the numerous authors who are living in silence, who don't have an audience to listen to them because of maybe financial issues, social issues, lack of access and opportunity. So that's what the entire title denotes. So we had literary events completely sponsored by the Voices of Silence books. We had literary events, poetry nights, and everything for such authors. Many such authors came to us, and we had online sessions with such authors, and it was quite fun. And since the lockdown, we had only one session, and we want to launch another book because we have a lot of pending content. I don't think more than 20 submissions can be included in one book, but we have more than 200 submissions which we have on the tail end, and we haven't even had the time to look at most of those submissions.
Mm-hmm.
So we are going to revive that initiative because of the lockdown and the financial crunch which was happening all around. None of us could actually concentrate on working on it consistently, but we're going to revive it. And we have a plan for this year, November, for launching another volume of it. So that's where the idea came from. 10 coffee shots.
I mean, that's a great initiative. Definitely stands for solidarity in the writing community, because I mean, we're living through a pandemic and people are trying to express themselves and whatever they're feeling, their emotions through art. So it's definitely quite interesting that, you want to give these people their voice, which is amazing. And all the best for another anthology that you would be releasing, and I hope it's a great success. So talking about your future plans, not just with your initiative but also with your books, we know there's 2 more books coming out in the Dev series, but what's ahead for you? Because you're so young right now and you've already written so many books, you're doing so much for the community. So where do you see yourselves in 5 years and 10 years? What all books are you thinking of releasing?
So I have two books which are completed. One is called The Religion Called Pragmatism. So I wanted to cover more like a non-fiction story, and it's a literary fiction narration amalgamation of all religions which emerged or coexisted in India for the past 2,000 years. So that's called Religion Called Pragmatism. It's not historic; it's a story of the present time. And then I have a story called The Big Earth. So I happened to visit an old age home back in 2017. And that's where I saw the miserable condition that our octogenarians and senior citizens are in. A lot of younger generation people have forgotten them. And that's where I got this idea of writing a story completely dedicated to old age homes and people living there, their stories, the stories that, again, the voices of silence there that nobody is paying heed to. So those kinds of stories. And I started visiting this particular old age home, talking to a few people there, and then getting their stories, getting their insights about life, because they have a lot to tell. They've experienced much more than I can even imagine right now. And then they're there in those small rooms, and uh, I don't dare to sympathize with them because it's offensive to them, because they have had a humongous journey, a journey deserving celebration. So I don't sympathize with them. I just want to celebrate their stories, and I want to give them the respect that they deserve. So that's one book which is complete, The Big Earth. And then I have a sequel to Cricos, which is called Aircos The Origin, which is in the works. I have a sequel to my book, The Mango Man, which is called Dawn of Alfonso, Alfonso being the mango. And that's also in the works. And then I have a sequel to my biographical book, The Idiosyncrasies of Life, and then two planned sequels for Dave and one for The Voices of Silence. So those are the things which I have on the literary side of things. Other than that, I want to be in the next 5 years. I think I want to see myself as a back end of a Netflix OTT being made on one of my books, and sitting with the director, cinematographer, and not assisting them, being abused by them because the content is not matching what I've written the book. And then maybe after 6 years, if I may say that 6 years when that particular thing is released, I want to be, I want to channel my inner narcissism with comments such as the book was better than the movie. So that's what
Oh,
that's what I plan in the next 6 years. But again, please Netflix, grab some of my books. They are great for making all video content, and the movie can be better than the book if you make it well. So
that's
I'll
true.
completely help. So that's where I see myself in the next 5 6 years.
I see. I mean, those are big plans, but definitely looks like something you have already set in motion. So I'm not only hoping, but I'm pretty sure we'll be seeing your face on Netflix and your books turned into movies or series or something like that soon. And I'm quite excited for it, frankly. So, talking about your experience and what you want to do in the future, I mean, would you like to give some tips to aspiring authors who might be watching this interview as to how to tackle these things? Because you've written in multiple genres, you've been writing for a while. So, yeah, just some tips.
I'll begin by saying that when I wrote the first content, the first piece of the first chapter, maybe the first paragraph of my life, it was pathetic. It was so awful that if my readers read it today, they'll like quit reading my books. So I started there, and it just comes with practice, with doing it all over again, doing it again and again. Maybe there are chapters and thousands words worth of content which I've deleted from my books, which I don't think is worthy, and it is something which is a necessity, which you have to do as an author. You have, if you want to create this perfect brainchild of yours, you have to go through a long and tedious process. And I think if you want to be an author, or if you think that you can be an author, maybe you don't have the passion for it, but you have the capability for it. Both ways. If you have the passion, not the capability. If you don't have the passion but have the capability, or the perfect and the most ideal, the utopian scenario that you have both the passion and the capability, should just start writing now. It'll hardly take you 30 to 45 minutes each day to write something or the other. Maybe write a small biographical account of the day, and then figure out how to create a fictional account through that, because you experience something, some miraculous events throughout the day, and some believable events, credible events throughout the day. If you write them down, you understand that how to create a story for a third person, from a third person perspective, for a specific character. If I can write a story about Rishabh, only then I can write a story about Dr. Matang Leeladhar Swami, because I have to imagine his environment, his internal and external, threats and maybe weaknesses, and all those things I'll be understanding only after I start writing. So my only suggestion is, don't wait. There is no perfect moment when there'll be enlightenment above you, because there is this is 21st century Kalyug, as I may refer to the Ramayana and make a slight meta referencing here. And there is no Bodhi tree which is going to give us enlightenment right now. It's a very fast paced and, if I may say, cruel world out there. And there is going to be no enlightenment. There's going to be no sudden change which is going to happen. So you have to start as early as possible. If you have the passion for it, the desire for it, then start now, write rubbish content. And when you look back at that rubbish content 6 months down the line, maybe 5 years down the line, or if you are quite blessed with talent, maybe even just a week down the line, you'll laugh at yourself and you'll be proud of yourself. So laughing at your past and being proud of your present. So I'll just say, start writing. That's my only advice. Start writing.
That's very well said, Rishabh. And it also feeds into one of the audience questions that we got. And they said that, I mean, you've been writing so much. So have you ever experienced writer's block, and how do you go through with it?
I think writer's block is quite underrated, because writers always have a block. There is no seamless writing, if I may say, because when I've written a particular chapter and I go back to read that chapter, 99% of the time, I'll not go into statistics, most of the time, I tend to dislike it, because what I've written is not up to the mark of my, if you can recall, I said dream. I dreamt about this character of Zayn. So that writing is not up to that dream, and it's not matching what I imagined. And I'm always disappointing myself. So it's about how less you're disappointing your imagination, because words are just words. They cannot be perfect completely. You can never be, even Shashi Tharoor cannot find the perfect vocabulary for creating the perfect story. Even Shakespeare couldn't. He invented words to be near perfection, which we have to interpret now. So so writer's block is something which you encounter almost all the time. There are dialogues which you cannot express. You have them in your head. Maybe you have them in some other language. So you'll not be able to interpret them and create that kind of an impact in this particular language, because especially with this book, most of the dialogues of the Ramayana are in Hindi, and original Ramayana is in Sanskrit.
Right.
So creating that kind of an impact, which those dohas and sothas had in that particular book, with my narration, my telltale, was kind of difficult, and I disappointed myself. But I wanted to disappoint myself as less as possible, so that I can create a near perfect story. So writer's block is incessant. It will never stop. You'll always have a writer's block, but it's all about having the will to fight through that frustration. And maybe going out for a walk, having a cup of coffee, or if you don't like coffee, a cup of tea, or whatever is your cup of tea. So having that and spending 15 minutes here and there, and then getting back to it, because the book will not write itself. And writer's block at the end of the day will just be an excuse. So to battle it, you have to create backstories again and again. Disappoint yourself lesser and lesser with each bill, which each construct. So that's how you conquer writer's block.
Right. So what I'm understanding by your words is that the more you write, the more you are able to get through it, which is, I think, an amazing advice, and definitely evident to your writing history. Because if you had not battled with your own writer's block, you would not have 6 books published already. So that's amazing. The other question that someone has asked you is, what are the writers that you look up to?
My favorite writer, Mr. Isaac Asimov. If I may dwell into science fiction, then of course it's Isaac. It's a close tie between Isaac Asimov and Douglas Adams. Isaac Asimov, because of his psychohistory theory and his characterization of Hari Seldon. I'll not dwell into it more. I'll become a geek then. Then Douglas Adams, because of a series called Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And it's a science fiction parody. It's not even a parody, it's a hysterical science fiction. And he said that when people are imagining space and planets, everybody is so serious, so damn serious, all attacks, aliens and everything, destruction, end of the world, and post-apocalypse and everything. I'll imagine the universe with funny elements. An alien who looks funny, or maybe an alien who does something funny, a planet which is funny, a circumstance which is funny. So that kind of writing I love the most. Other than science fiction, my favorite realist writer is Ayn Rand, and she has, I think, grasped the essence of capitalism, communism, socialism, and all kinds of political ideologies through her romantic and maybe realistic and I'll say dramatic narrations in Atlas Shrugged, We the Living, and Fountain It. So Ayn Rand, of course, all-time favorite. And then when coming to science fiction, which is my preferred genre, then Isaac is Morgan Douglas Adams.
Right. Definitely looks like what you have read has also inspired what you write, which I
A
think
lot.
is also amazing. Well, I think this was a great conversation, Rishabh, and I really hope with your book, Dave, and also the further installments, I really hope that the kids of this generation, they get to be in touch with their own culture, with just text from their country, which is, I think, a great initiative. So definitely a shout out to you for trying to bring about that change, because this is something that is like, it's not an underrated thing. It's something, it's a revolution in itself, which is amazing. So while we're talking about that, would you like to announce your giveaway right now?
Yeah, so I have two copies of Dave. And since we are in the midst of Pride Month right now, and happy Pride Month, a big shout out to everybody and a big shout out to Pride Month. And sadly, Pride is not being celebrated openly in the streets because of lockdown and COVID
Yes.
restrictions. And it's the second year. So it's unfortunate, but I'm elated that Pride Month has come to India. India has been very inclusive in the past 2 3 years. And in this Pride Month, I want to give away two copies just for getting these two signed copies with a special message dedicated to that particular reader who's winning this. For winning this, you have to enroll in this special contest. Just go to my Instagram account, which is Kridious, Kridious, and click on stories. There's a particular trivia which you'll encounter about pride, and you have to answer that question. There's no right or wrong answer, just your interpretation of that question. And you may get a chance to get a signed copy with a special message just for you. So that's my giveaway. Two copies of Dave are going for you.
Okay, well, I hope you don't mind if I enter this giveaway as well. And I really
Sure,
hope
sure.
I win. That's amazing. But I had a wonderful time talking to you today, Rishabh, and a great shout out once again to your book, Dave, which you will be able to find on Yukioto's website and also on Amazon. So I'll have a link in the description, and we'll put this all over on Facebook and Instagram. So you'll be able to get your books from there. So I hope you had a great time with us, and I hope you had a great time, Rishabh, talking about the book.
Amazing. I
Uh,
had an amazing time.
yes. Would you like to say a few words to the audience?
A few words. I think I'll never summarize things in few words, but I'll just say that keep reading, keep writing, and I think you shouldn't be demoralized by this disconnect from this world because of the pandemic. There are stories all around. Dwell into stories actually keeps you involved, keeps your mind floating through these endless universes. And when you dwell inside stories, you're not just inside this world or just this room. You're inside this whole plethora of universe, this endless universe, which you can, swim through and find your own characters, find your own, things you correlate with, things you empathize with. So I think I'll just say keep reading, keep enjoying, keep watching movies, Netflix, keep spending time with your family, keep spending time with your loved ones, and just buy my book if possible. So that's my
Definitely.
so
Definitely.
that's my day.
I would also like to say this to the audience, that I've read the book and I feel like the visual imagery in the book is amazing. So it will definitely feel like you've been transported to an alternate universe where you're seeing these events unfold. So definitely check out this book. And thank you so much for joining me and Rishabh in this conversation today. And I hope everyone has a good time. And thank you so much again, Rishabh. I hope you have a good day as well.
Thank you, Isvi. Same to you, and same to everybody at UPO.
Okay. Thank you so much. We'll leave now. Bye bye.
Bye.